Hey guys, welcome to our Sunday live. I know it is Easter today, so a lot of people will probably be watching this a little bit later on, but I wanted to do something kind of a little bit more fun this week. So we're talking about something that I find terribly interesting, which is catnip. Why cats like catnip, and some really interesting information that has recently come about this year. It's been studied for a while, and how catnip actually acts as like a bug or mosquito repellent. So we're going to talk about all of that. I do want to say welcome and thank you for being here. If you have any questions or comments throughout the live, or even if you're watching this later, if you're on live, you can post in the chat. If you are watching this later on, you can post in the comments. I do keep up on top of all of that, so if you have any questions or comments, I am here to answer and, converse back and forth with you. I also want to remind you the information for today's live is linked in the description, and I want you to check out all the links in the description, especially the link to Patreon, because you get all new and exclusive content over there. Yeah, so my throat is actually bugging me a little bit today, guys. I've been drinking on my hot tea this morning, trying to just get it okay to be able to do this live this morning. So let me know. Go ahead and post. I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat as well, just so you guys know I'm here. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm just going to post a welcome. I hope you guys can hear me. So today we're specifically talking about catnip, and one of the things that really interests me so much about catnip, not just because I have cats, is because of the information coming out, the study that has recently been done, I believe in Japan, I'm going to pull that up in just a second, about the bug repellent qualities that catnip actually has. So I'm looking at what plants, when we move, we're going to be moving in a couple of months, what plants I want to be planting around the house, specifically keeping in mind that I am interested in planting, of course, native plants, but also plants that are going to be beneficial, whether that is for their bug repellent properties, or medicinal properties, or maybe even food. So that's all of the stuff that I'm really looking into to figure out how we're going to do our landscaping and what plants I want to plant, specifically in the backyard, but probably around the front yard too. And this information that is recently coming about, of course, I've had cats my entire adult life, and I know, I've seen firsthand what happens, and not all cats, it's not 100% of cats actually get the effects of catnip, but many of them do, and what is that all about, right? Also, make sure you stick around, because I am also going to be, just because today is Easter, I decided to go ahead and at the end of today's live, I'm going to be talking about a couple of Easter related things, hazards and things like that for our pets. So I just decided kind of last minute to throw that in because it is Easter. But so here's what's really interesting about catnip. Also, guys, remember, if at any point during this live stream, or if you're watching this after the fact, you can go ahead and post in the chat or post in the comments. And if you want to help my channel continue to be able to bring you information, whether it is about cats, whether it is about dogs, dog training, nutrition, enrichment, all of that good stuff, make sure to check the link in the description for my Patreon and join me over there, because you get all new and exclusive content over there. I also post about things that I post about on YouTube as well, but you get new and exclusive content on top of that, which is really interesting. So here's what happened. Researchers teamed up, and they started actually wondering, what is it about catnip that cats are so, some places call it cat mint as well. And there's also something called silver vine, which I think is just very similar to catnip. So they were studying these and trying to figure out what is it about these plants that cats are so attracted to. And then they actually found what is in catnip that cats are so attracted to. And then they decided to study further and figure out, is there anything else about catnip that is attractive, that is maybe beneficial just, in the wild. So catnip or catmint, depending on where you are, what you call it, there's a substance inside of the plant. It's called, and I hope I say this right, nepetalactone. Yes, nepetalactone. And it's actually an iridoid. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm just giving you these terms because we may talk about them later. And basically what that is, it activates the opioid system in the feline brain. Very similar, they found, to what morphine and heroin do in people. So it activates the opioid system in the feline brain, which is terribly interesting. There are other plants in the mint family. Catnip is actually part of the mint family. And basil, oregano, rosemary, lemon balm, and mint are all in that same family. However, just through evolution of the plant, they have lost the ability to produce these iridoids, which is the nepetalactone that we were just talking about. Catnip, however, and silvervine still have the ability to produce these. So that's why your cat is more attracted to catnip over anything else in the mint family, because the other plants in the mint family, and quite honestly, if you think about it, basil, oregano, rosemary, mint, possibly even lemon balm, I'm not really sure about that one, are all plants that humans have really taken over, right? While they do grow wild, the majority of these plants are grown for human consumption. So we've kind of taken over the evolution of these plants. So they no longer are producing the same things they would produce if they had just naturally evolved alongside us and not because of us. I hope that makes sense. We don't use catnip, to my knowledge, for our own consumption. So it has just been allowed to naturally evolve, and it hasn't been, we haven't taken over, basically. So it still does what it was meant to do in the wild. So these teams of researchers have, been studying, actually over the past 5 years, they have been studying the iridoid that the catnip has been emitting. Excuse me. Just drink some tea. So they've been studying it, and they have been testing it with all sorts of cats. Domestic cats, they've actually studied it on feral cats. They've studied it on tigers. I want to say tigers. I might be wrong with tigers. It wasn't tigers. It was a leopard, lynxes, jaguars. So they tested it in all sorts of cat species, and all cat species, they all are attracted to it. Very, very interesting. So it's pretty much like all felines. And interesting, what's even more interesting is that they also tried it with mice and dogs are not attracted to it at all. They don't know the difference in the catnip or the iridoid that actually is produced by the catnip and just a saline pouch. Neither one of them they have any hits on at all. So really, to me at least, really interesting. So go ahead, if you do have any comments or questions, go ahead and post them either in the chat or in the comments, depending on if you're watching this live or if you're watching this later on. I'm here to answer any questions that you have. So why is this interesting? Well, it's interesting for a number of reasons, because we know that it affects the cat's opioid system in the brain. So if we think about what humans use opioids for, we're talking about relieving pain, right? Possibly relieving anxiety, inducing pleasure. So those are the two main things. We take it at face value when we see a cat interacting with catnip that has been provided to them that it induces pleasure, right? We take that at face value. But there's also that pain reliever aspect of, opioids in our system. So how could that possibly be beneficial on down the road for our cats, right? That's something that's interesting to me, because as I prefer to use as much natural stuff as I possibly can. is there a way, and I don't know, this has to be researched, and I think this is kind of like the beginning of research that may lead to more research. Is catnip something that we could actually use to help our cats with pain relief instead of using, pharmaceuticals that are not natural, that do harm to the body in addition to, everything has side effects, right? Side effects are just things that the pharmaceutical company doesn't want you to pay attention to. There are effects of the drug that they call side effects so that you don't think of them as, a main effect of the drug. But that's just what it is. There's really, in reality, there's no such thing as a side effect. These are the effects of the drug, right? So what could be learned in the future by studying this more to potentially use catnip or catmint or even silvervine to help relieve pain in our cats, where we can use something more natural that isn't going to have any negative effects in the body. So to me, that's something that's very, very interesting. It says the blood work of the cats showed that levels of the hormone were significantly elevated after exposure compared with controls. 5 other cats whose opioid systems had been blocked showed no interest in interacting with the pouches. So yeah, right. Why would they? Because they block the opioid system. So that's really, really interesting to me, because I think there's a lot more research to be done and a lot more to be learned about how we can use these in medicine, how we can use more natural, plants and like catnip with our cats instead of constantly pumping them full of drugs, right? So let me just check here and see. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. All right, let me get back to this. I'm like a little scatterbrained today, guys. Sorry. So, another thing that I found very interesting about the fact that catnip stimulates the opioid system in the cat's brain is that, again, there are so many avenues of research now to be done on catnip and how it can be used. So we know that the opioid center of the brain helps with pain control, but it's also a pleasure center, right? So there are implications then that it could possibly even help with multicat households. So for example, if you have 2 cats that are not getting along, and this happens often, right? They could be getting along wonderfully, insert some stimulus, and now they are at each other's throats. It happens. Is there potential for catnip to be used in these instances to help this tension between cats start to dissolve? Because we know it also activates the pleasure center of the brain. So could these natural remedies help? And help in so many different areas. And again, more research has to be done, but honestly, using a high quality catnip, whether you grow it yourself or you buy it from a reputable source, for me, it wouldn't hurt to try it, especially if you are in a situation where you have 2 cats that, were great, and insert some stimulus and now they're at each other's throats, right? Of course, you want to separate them, and maybe use some catnip as, this little buffer to help reintroduce them. So I think there's a lot to be learned there. There's a lot more research to be done there. But even in another way, catnip, we're seeing now, because of the research that was just done, that catnip actually has these pain relieving properties that we were just talking about, because it activates the opioid system in the brain. So if we look at that in comparison to humans, there are actually people who use marijuana to help relieve pain, to help reduce anxiety. There's a lot still to be learned with marijuana. It is a plant, so it is much more natural than anything else that, a pharmaceutical that you would use. Unfortunately, our government in the US, we have the war on drugs, and marijuana was lumped into that. I think personally unfairly, not that I use it, not that I'm an advocate for it for myself. I just think that it's a plant, and why not at least allow people to research how it can benefit us? So that's my thought on it. But similarly to how some people are using marijuana to help relieve pain, to help relieve anxiety, it's possible that catnip can actually do the same for cats. So again, more research has to be done on that, but I think there's a lot to be learned there. And I'm not even sure, why not, right? Like, other than the fact that pharmaceutical companies will potentially lose out, quite honestly, I think there's a lot of room for natural remedies in our lives that we are ignoring. And there's a lot of room for natural remedies in our pets' lives that a lot of people are ignoring because we're just not told about it. Like, we have to get out there and do our own research about it. But anyway, so in addition, when this research was being done, they said, well, are there any other reasons, like out in the wild, that cats would be attracted to catnip? Is there a reason that catnip is producing these iridoids that cats are attracted to? Is there some reason in the wild that, is there a benefit that catnip has that we don't know about yet? So let's look into that, right? And what they found is that in addition to all the happy hormones, the opioid center that is activated in the cat's brain, this nepetalactone, which we were just talking about, that is being released in catnip, also has the ability to repel insects. So even 20 or so years ago, we knew this. We knew that the catnip specifically, and these iridoids that they are giving off, is actually comparable to DEET, which a lot of people are very familiar with because there was like this ban on DEET, or actually is a ban on DEET in the US. So what they are speculating now, and more research has to be done on it, is that when cats actually rub against catnip or silvervine in the wild, and they're getting the nepetalactone on their body, right? They're getting these iridoids that the catnip or silvervine is releasing. They're getting it all over their bodies. And in effect, what they're doing is applying insect repellent to their bodies. It's a natural insect repellent. So that's why I was saying I am looking at planting catnip around my house once we move. So they did some tests on this to figure out if that was actually the case. And they actually conducted live mosquito challenges, is what they call them. And I don't, even the article that I read didn't want to get into exactly what that was, because it probably wasn't the best thing in the world. But what they observed was that cats that had the nepetalactone on them, which came from the catnip plant, and then cats who did not have any of that on them, the cats with the catnip on their skin, only about half of the number of mosquitoes landed on that cat. So there actually is benefit outside of just, activating the opioid center. I think that's the reward for the cat, right? So the cat has to be attracted to the plant for some reason, and that is the activation of the opioid center, right? But the benefit that the cat is getting from that, in all reality, is the natural insect repellent that they're getting all over their body and rubbing all over their body. So it's just really interesting to me how nature works. And I think that's just a perfect example of it, right? Like, in order for the catnip to be used as a natural insect repellent, the cat actually has to be attracted to it. So the plant has to provide something to the cat to be attracted to it, which is the activation of the opioid center. So it's like this circle, right? I think that's just so interesting, which is why I wanted to talk about it today, about how, just how nature works is so incredibly interesting to me. So that's basically, like, in a nutshell, what I wanted to talk about with catnip this morning. But like I said, for sticking around to the end, we're talking about a couple of things that you need to be aware of today, especially being Easter, hazards for your pets that you just want to like steer clear of. So let's talk about it. Lilies. Absolutely not. We do not want lilies around our cats. They are potentially deadly, and that includes all, like, pretty much all, like, there are only, I think, 3 types of lilies that are not toxic. So for me, just no lilies. But the toxic ones are tiger lilies, Asiatic lilies, stargazer lilies, Casablanca lilies, rubrum lilies, daylilies, Japanese show lilies, and Easter lilies are all very, very toxic, potentially deadly to your pets, period. Don't even bring these in your house. Don't put them in your yard, in my opinion. The non-toxic varieties of lilies are calla lilies, peace lilies, and Peruvian lilies. So those 3 are okay. But, I mean, for me, no lilies, right? Make sure, for the most part, you are not sharing your Easter dinner with your pets. Ham is entirely too fatty. Glazed ham, or honey glazed ham, like, you don't want your dog having those sugars. Anything carb related, we don't want to give to our pets. Anything too fatty, we don't want to give to our pets. There are plenty of other wonderful foods that we can provide to our pets, but generally what we eat on holidays is not something we want to give to our pets. Onions, never ever want to give to our pets, right? Chocolates are another thing. If you are having Easter egg hunts with children, make sure that your dog is not getting into your dog is going to want to be out there and participating in all the fun with your pets. You can do Easter egg hunts that are specific for your pets and not let them participate in the Easter egg hunts with your children, because we don't want them getting into the candy, or even some people put pennies or change inside of Easter eggs. We don't want our dogs eating those either. That can cause poisoning as well, not to mention blockages in the entire. We just don't want to deal with any of that, right? So if you're going to do an Easter egg hunt specifically for your dogs, you can actually put out hard-boiled eggs for your dogs to find and eat. That's great. Or you can put out single ingredient freeze-dried treats inside of eggs if you are comfortable that your dog isn't going to eat the plastic egg. If you are not comfortable that your dog would not eat the plastic egg, then you can just put out some freeze-dried single ingredient treats for your dog to hunt and find. I think that would be fun. But definitely keep them away from chocolates and other sugary treats. Anything containing xylitol, of course. This is like year-round, but when we have these holidays come up, we tend to see surges of candies that have xylitol in them as a sugar replacement. Absolutely, completely toxic to your pets. So we want to make sure that they are not getting into that. Yeah. Oh, like, if you are putting together Easter baskets, that fake grass that goes into them, make sure your pets 100% have absolutely no access to that. If your pets get a hold of that and eat it, let me tell you, it's not just dogs, your cats will eat it too. It can cause all kinds of havoc in the digestive system, in the intestines. It can actually knot up inside the expensive surgeries. We do not want our pet to have to go through that. Keep all of that away from your pets. So those are just a few tips for Easter specifically. make sure you are keeping your pets away from all of that stuff. Keep all of that stuff away from your pets, right? So those are just a few tips. I don't want to go too long. It is Easter. I know a lot of people are going to be spending plenty of time with their families today, and I encourage you to do so. If you want to include your pets in your Easter festivities, just make sure you're doing so safely. And I hope you got some really great information about catnip from today, and maybe even opened your mind as to why we need to be even looking into these things, because there could be a lot of resources that we could use catnip for our cats that we aren't currently. Some natural remedies that we could be providing to our cats that they would normally find if they were wild. But since they are not, we need to, be more proactive in keeping them happier and healthier. And I think there is a lot of potential with catnip. So as always, make sure if you have any comments or questions, you're posting them either in the chat or in the comments after the live video has ended. And make sure to check out my link to Patreon in the description of this video. Over on Patreon, you get all new and exclusive content. And it helps me continue to provide content to you here on YouTube. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give it a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that other people can see this video as well. Make sure to comment down below if you have any comments or questions, whether about this or something else. If there's something you want me to talk about next week, you can comment that down below as well. I'd love to hear about it. Also, if you look down there at that subscribe button and it's red, that means you are not subscribed to my channel, and I don't know why not. It is absolutely free to you. Go ahead and click the button, turn it gray. When that happens, a bell will appear. Click the bell, select all notifications, and that way YouTube can actually notify you anytime I upload a video or anytime I'm going live. Thank you so much for being here. I really do hope you learned something. Can't wait to see you guys next week. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a happy Easter. Bye, guys.